This is Stasi Eldridge. Welcome to Captivated. This world vies for our attention in 1,000 different ways. But the most important thing, the preeminent thing, the essential thing, is to give our attention to Jesus. Welcome, dear ones. Stasi here. I am so happy to be with you, you who are the apple of God's eye, you on whom his favor, his love is set, you who are chosen and cherished and wanted and seen and beloved. I pray that today, that the reality of that incredible, fabulous truth seeps deeper into every fiber of your being today. I am really looking forward to my conversation today with my wonderful guest, Melissa Johnson. And let me just tell you a little bit about Melissa before I get to just talk with her and unpack a little about from her wisdom. I'm going to read this from her bio. Melissa is a marriage and family therapist. She's a certified spiritual director and teaches a course on soul well-being at Bethel University in St. Paul, Minnesota. She believes we are most fully alive when we are able to connect deeply with God, others, and ourselves. She began Impossible Beauty, a fabulous podcast, as well as a blog there. And you can go on that site. I'm going to leave everything in the show notes. And there is such rich resources there, really quality stuff. She writes, "Let's redefine beauty. I want to help women find authentic beauty, the kind of beauty their heart and soul long for. Beauty can be hard to define. As women, we are expected to be beautiful, which usually means physically perfect, aesthetically flawless. It seems we can never be enough or do enough, and sometimes in a world filled with brokenness and suffering, it feels like true beauty is hard to come by. At times, beauty seems impossible. But what if true beauty exists and is more brilliant than we ever imagined?" Oh, I love that. And Melissa, I believe, as well as the listeners, that we learn so much from hearing other people's stories and plumbing the depths of their wisdom. And I wish that we had hours today. But in our short little time together, we can go far. But I want to just announce early that you can go further with Melissa. She has a book that is coming out June 6th called Soul Deep Beauty, where you can go deeper into her story and what she has learned and how God has met her and invited her into a life of fullness and presence and joy, redefining and reclaiming the true beauty that she and we all possess. It's so good. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, Stacey. What a lovely introduction. I'm so grateful to be here.
Congratulations on your book.
Mm.
It's going to this is airing on May 31st. So in just 6 days, it's going to be available wherever books are sold. Yeah.
Perfect. Such amazing
Are you
timing too.
excited?
So yeah, so perfect.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I want to dive in. I had the privilege of getting an advance
Mhm.
copy. And so I'm going to ask you some questions of things you talk about. And I want you to know, Melissa, take your time, unpack, go wherever you want.
Okay.
You use the phrase in sharing your own journey about
Mm.
American beauty. So how would you define that?
Yeah, yes. For me, and I make this note at the beginning too, because I want to like mention or name that, of course. I think these are Western beauty standards. And also there's a woman that I just recently interviewed on my podcast named Elena Rossini. She's an Italian filmmaker who made this documentary called The Illusionist about the globalization of Western standards. And so this American brand of beauty has kind of become, in a lot of ways, any globalized nation, the brand of beauty that we're like seeking after, um, larger than America. So I like to name that. But for me, obviously, my context is America. So American beauty, what I grew up on is you are thin, you have flawless skin, youthful, I grew up on Disney movies too. So, big doughy eyes, beautiful flowing hair. That's the American brand of beauty that I came to know and that I grew up on.
Yeah, now we add in white teeth.
Mm. Yes, yes, sorry, missed that, and very, very straight teeth, especially
Oh,
yes,
yes.
yes.
Yeah, it's just ever expanding and this out of reach crazy. So, we're gonna unpack that a lot. But Melissa,
Mm.
personally, why are you so passionate about this topic?
Yeah, such a good question, Stacey. And I will try to be concise. I am so passionate about it because, to be totally honest with you, I didn't think American beauty was impacting me in any particular way until I had my own kind of turning point in my journey. Probably the biggest turning point I've had so far is I was practicing as a marriage and family therapist, and my therapist, my own personal therapist, invited me to do some personal work around my relationship with food, which, honestly, this was like a couple years long journey where she kind of kept encouraging me to get some more support. And long story short, it turns out it was an eating disorder. I ended up spending some time in intensive treatment. And because of that, I life was put on pause in a lot of different ways. And it made me look at where are some of these beliefs coming from in terms of what I believe my body should look like, what kind of practices I should be doing with my, like, for exercise or for food. And it made me kind of pull back the veil on where these values came from. And I started to see that we are being sold a broken brand of beauty, is what I call it, that is shame based and purposefully fuels our insecurities so other people can make money. And
Mm,
I honestly became like pretty, I guess, angry and then extremely passionate about wanting to sound the alarm on that. Not only because I don't like being played and I don't like it when other people are being played, but also because I realize this is not only playing us, but it is disintegrating us. And I mean that
mm,
on a number of levels. I learned in my own journey how my own experience with my even my hunger and fullness cues, like the simplest of attunement or being in tune with your body, those things were disintegrated. It disintegrates us and, like, relationally with other women, pits us against each other. And also, I think it because it promotes shame, it actually I talk about in the book a little neuroscience borrowed from Dr. Kurt Thompson about how it disintegrates neural networks, shame does. And so I noticed that this brand of beauty is not only taking our money, which that's one thing, but it is actually disintegrating our souls. And
mm,
that is something that I couldn't stand by anymore after I saw it in my own life and started seeing it in not only the women that I was in treatment with, but I started to see it in women outside of treatment. And I started to realize, like, wait a second, these are like the beliefs my peers are holding around beauty. These are the beliefs that the general public is believing about beauty, food, body image. And I couldn't not say something. Like, I'm an introvert, Stacey, and so I'm not someone who's like, I'm going to start a podcast. But it was more like I couldn't stay silent because, like, this isn't okay.
oh, there's so much there. Okay, I have to go back to a couple of
Yeah.
things. I love your passion because it's so vital. You
Mm,
see the
mm,
destruction that is going on through this.
yeah.
So go back to what you meant by disintegrating brain. You were
Yeah.
talking just passed by.
Yeah, yeah. So, Dr. Kurt Thompson, and if he hopefully he doesn't, hopefully I don't destroy his how he would say this. He would say it much better. But so what we know about our brains is that they work, I guess, best or at their healthiest state when they are integrated. So that means that the both like right and left hemispheres are integrating and working together, and also upper and lower brain are integrated and working together. But what we see that shame does is it actually disintegrates between those the neural networks, like between like the neurons, but also between the right left integration and up down integration. And so literally when shame is occurring in the brain, these are the things that we see. And what we see about American advertising and American beauty is that it is running on shame. I say that shame is the lifeblood of American beauty. And yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's so good. So say more about disintegrating your soul.
Yes. So My understanding of the soul, and I feel like, this is an age-long discussion of what is the soul. And so, for me, where I'm at in my journey, and perhaps, I'll probably gain more wisdom as I go, but right now I see that the soul as the essence of who we are. And so this class that I teach at Bethel, and I give credit to Christine Osgood, who kind of founded this, well, and she had actually founded originally on Dallas Willard's model of the soul. But I see that the essence of who we are is impacted by our emotions, by our relationships, our cognitions, or our thinking, by our relationships, and our meaning and purpose in life. And so those are the six domains that we look at in this class that I teach on soul well-being. And so that is the model of the soul that I use. And I see how actually this is damaging every aspect of our soul. I could talk about in each domain how it's impacting us. But one of the things that I, in my own journey with my kind of my recovery journey, that I realized, that I think is kind of a glaring example of this is, in order to try to meet the demands of American Beauty, I started at some point in my life realizing that, oh, I should not obey my hunger cues. Like if I eat less, then I can, be thinner. And for me, that is such a base part of being human. Like tuning into, am I hungry? Am I cold? Do I need to how can I nurture myself? And so I started to disintegrate or become disconnected from my own embodied experience. And for me, what I realized actually, Stacey, and this was like such like an aha moment in my recovery, was when I started to actually notice what my body was telling me. I started to notice the voice of God more. So because if I'm shutting down to my intuition, which I think to me is like that's what I would, one of the ways I think God speaks to me, if I'm not noticing that, if I'm shutting myself off to those cues, then I'm shutting myself off to the inner wisdom that God has given me in terms of really practical things like, am I hungry? Am I cold? But also to the still small voice of God, of the invitations He has for me, or, when I have moments of compassion or moments of joy, which again I think speak of true beauty. But that's a huge example, I think, of disconnection or disintegration within my own experience.
That is so good. There's so much there
Mm,
to unpack. So I'm glad that I and the listeners can go further
mm,
with what you've written. Something that strikes me about that, the disintegration that you were saying, we work best when we're integrated.
yes.
And I was thinking about our union with God.
Yes.
Like we are meant to live, if you put your hands together, like in a place of prayer, that's
Mm,
intimacy. And we want that, yes. But then if you fold your fingers around so you tight, that's union.
mm,
And it's what we're made for, this oneness with Christ. So this integrated really strikes me, and that we are meant to be in tune. We are
mm,
meant to be functioning well, connected to God, connected with ourselves, attuned. And how many of us, I think probably the majority of us out there, certainly this is my story, to turn off the cues because we think they're bad.
yes.
When did this become your own journey and going, oh wait, I actually have a problem
Mm.
here? When did that begin for you?
I'm like laughing to myself because I mean, I it began, and I talk about this in the book as well. Um it began after, like, I was in treatment probably for, like, 3 months, and I realized, like, "Oh, wow." But, like, it's so interesting how disconnected I became from my own cues of, like, wholeness, and
Mm,
because I had become so performance and externally focused, achievement-based, and noticed, so I got that invitation from my personal therapist, and I kind of denied it for a while. I was like, I don't think we're talking about an eating disorder here." I think I'm okay. Whatever. All my friends are doing the same things with, and have the same beliefs about calories and steps, and which actually I'll just say too, it does, I will say, makes me wonder about how many people perhaps have disordered relationships with food and body image, that we just don't realize it because it is so extremely not only normalized but applauded in our culture.
yes.
So like I said, it took me a while, and then I just started to notice that other things in my life were kind of falling apart. Like my workout routines were getting longer, and just I couldn't do as many things, like keep up with other responsibilities. And so then I had to do the treatment, and so it was probably only into, like, 3 months into treatment that I started to wake up to, like, "Oh, wow. Yeah, they're right. This is actually problematic."
Mm. I so appreciate what you said about wondering how widespread this is because I've actually only known a couple of
Yeah.
people in my life that have this, like, food doesn't hold a power over
Mhm.
them. It's
Mm.
the attunement to their body, what I need, what I want, and I stop,
Yeah.
and maybe I want a salad, maybe I want a hamburger,
Yeah.
maybe, and just paying
Yeah.
attention without the
Yes.
shame, without the what I ought to be doing, what I need to be doing in order to be worthy of love,
Yes.
in order to be beautiful.
Yes.
It's kind of shocking to
Mm.
me how widespread it is.
Oh, yes, yes, and yeah, I was just talking about this with someone yesterday, just, I almost feel like we all need, like, a cultural detox around beauty and around our relationship with food when it comes to diet culture and the messages we get about even, our ideas around health and how we tie thinness with health and how actually, damaging that is for all of us.
Right, right. I was talking with a friend yesterday and we were saying, what if everybody was the same size, the same shade of skin
Mm,
color, the same race, the same height? That would be so boring. That's just not who God is.
yes, yes,
He loves it. And then for us to reclaim, and for me in my personal journey, to as a woman in a larger
mm,
body, to say, there's beauty in that. Like, no, to stand and rebel against, because it's really, actually, I would name it as evil, what
oh.
the messages of the world.
Oh, completely, Stacey. And I don't want to interrupt you. What were you going to say?
No, do go.
Yeah, and I talk about again I borrow this from Dr. Kurt Thompson. Just this idea of shame being a minion of evil, and I just see this. I mean, that was one of the things that my eyes were open to was like, oh my goodness, if we can be distracted our whole life, we can't do the work that God is inviting us to. Um, what a great tactic that evil has over us. And so honestly, that was the thing that like when the coin fell in the slot on that one, I was like, no, I can't let this happen because we have such, and I think this goes into men for men as well, but we have such amazing capacities, such amazing gifts God has given us. And if we are spent, our mind energies, our heart energies, our physical energy is spent on chasing something that is never going to fulfill us, like, yeah, that is like evil's ultimate desire.
It is. It keeps you centered on yourself, terrified to
Mm.
offer because you feel like you have nothing to offer if you're not attaining some sort of standard that's been preset by the world of what makes you acceptable. And then it's hard. It's hard to go out and say, "How are you?" to someone else.
Yes.
Hard to not go into the room and size up every woman and see where you fit in the scale of, we're just conditioned and trained to do
Yeah.
this. And yet we're invited by God
Mm.
to see us ourselves as he sees us, which is so fun to say that to dive into that. No, I'm beautiful now. This isn't about reaching a certain goal weight or somebody else's opinion, because there's a story there, right? It's not just the world and the magazines and the messages. There's a story growing up, most of us
Mm.
have, about what we were told.
Yes.
When did it begin to go right for you?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it was at the point where we're kind of at that coin falling to the slot moment where I realized like, oh my goodness, this this could be my whole life in terms of whether that would be in and out of treatment um or it could be being distracted by this. And I also realized, I think like kind of playing the tape forward, if I were to follow American Beauty, it led a path of disintegration. But if I
Mm,
walk the path of authentic beauty, which I define as the life of God at work in us and among us, if I pursued that path, that would lead to ultimate connection and integration and the things that I think that God ultimately wants for us. And that is ultimately what we will be experiencing. And so I realized that this American brand of beauty really wanted my life. Like it could take my life in a lot of different ways. I mean, you could say it literally, or you could say it of mind, heart, etc. but God was offering me something that my soul actually longed for. And so I kind of saw the road splitting and kind of I could take either path. And so at that point, I got a little, I mean, I got a little angry too. Like, this is not okay at like the advertising and corporations, but also at evil for like working together with these types of schemes that lead us down these roads that are damaging and disintegrating.
That is such a great
Mm,
response. That's a righteous
mm,
anger. That's a standing up and going, "No."
yeah.
You said you got a taste of what my soul actually longs for. What does your soul actually long for?
Yeah. So the interesting part about this, Stacey, is at the same time I was, and I don't know, I think looking back, this was a bit overambitious, but I was also pursuing my degree in spiritual formation. So during the day, I would go to treatment, and then in the evenings, I would read about like the mystic's love for God and classes like Shame and Grace. So it just the intersection of these two experiences where it could not be more perfectly paired.
Wow.
So what do I mean by what our souls long for? Like I said, I started kind of diving into uh I just love the mystics because I just feel like there's this mysterious nature to their descriptions of like the love and vastness of God that I feel like is so accurate. So I'm like, how can I begin to understand that? And I just love that they like throw their whole lives and their whole experience and their whole heart into seeking connection with God. And in the book, I talk a little bit about this, how I actually had a couple of my own experiences in like prayer and kind of seeing glimpses of like the heart of Jesus and God's heart for me. And so as I saw that, I noticed, and I mean, logically, I started to realize it, like with what I just described, the different paths. I've had a couple experiences of God's love and new in different ways. And so what our hearts long for, I think, is that connection, that deep connection with the love of God. And I mean, it's almost laughable that we chase after a different kind of beauty, and I have so much compassion for that we do, because I feel like we've been duped in so many ways our whole lives to chase after that kind of beauty, and so I have so much compassion. But when I compare it to this like expansive love of God that like words can't name.
That's so good. I want to read a little
Yeah.
bit. Can I read just a little passage
Yeah,
from your
of
book?
course.
Um, you wrote, God's grace assures us that because of the outrageous love he has for us, we are enough. That is the miracle of grace. And that is what our souls long for, what they were created to experience, that kind of unequivocal love and acceptance. And that is what God offers us. That is why God is our soul's true home. I love that. And then you write a little bit about realizing that all along you've had this advocate
Mm,
next to you fighting for you. That is so
mm,
beautiful. And then you write, I became distinctly aware of the two very real pulls on my life, both battling for my affections and attention, one for life and goodness, and one that would, if given the chance, ultimately lead to my diminishment. In that battle, God wanted me to embrace the fullness of life for which I had been created in all its goodness and light. At my core, I wanted that too. I hadn't realized I'd had such a powerful advocate at my side. God was for me, and that changed everything. I'm cheering. That is it. What we want everyone to know that He's not holding up this measuring stick. He's not hitting us with it. Shame's not in His vocabulary.
yeah.
But I love. Oh my gosh, a book on grace and shame. Brilliant,
Mhm,
brilliant. So, say you're speaking to a woman right
mhm,
now, and you are,
mhm.
and she's coming in from either, uh, well, wherever we're
Yeah.
at, and the stories of our life, and what we're battling, and what we're suffering, and what we're trying to endure, and what our hopes are, and what we're longing for, and our deepening, growing experience. I pray for being engulfed in the love of God and being immersed in a world
Mm,
that will never tell you that you are enough. What do you want to say to her?
Hmm. Yeah, what's coming to mind, I mean, just 2 things. Um, I just want her to know, I think that she's just been saturated with lies her whole life
Mm.
about her worth and what the expectations are and what we should be and should do. But I also want her to know that, like, that's exactly what they are, they're lies, and if we carry them to their end, there will be no life there. And so my hope is that I'm just finding this, I'm sensing this, maybe an invitation to maybe just stillness as well. And I'm such an advocate of just practicing the presence of God. And because I think these things can be in our heads, which is beautiful. But I think where things really, where transformation really happens is when we kind of go from that head knowledge to an experience of God's love or God's grace. And so maybe just an invitation to settle in and into a space of stillness and just ask for an experience of, I mean, even noticing your breath and how your breath is a gift. Every day, every breath we're given is a gift from God, and to me, it's a sign of this like enduring love that holds us in this
Mm.
enduring embrace. And so, I guess I would invite her to stillness and just noticing, how is God present in this moment? And maybe you're in nature right now. Maybe you're noticing the sunlight or the beauty of the natural landscape. Maybe your kids are playing nearby, or maybe it's just your breath. And so I would just invite that woman to notice the signs of God's love and to breathe that in.
Oh, that's beautiful. Is that married to attunement?
That's a good so attunement, I'm trying to think of like the official definition. I think would be like when we are in line with someone else's cues. I mean, and I think about our relationship with God as like having an attuned experience. So yeah, I would probably liken it to becoming attuned with the heart of God. Yeah, that becoming attuned
Mm.
with God's heart for us. And I mean, I think of this like as even as I ever think about the word attunement, I think of like a parental love or like a mother's love for her child, and how even when hopefully this isn't too far out there, but I love attachment research and how even physiology syncs up between a baby and her caregiver, his or her caregiver. And so when we can become attuned with, like, I just think it's beautiful, and to think about our, like, God is our ultimate parent, like becoming attuned with the heart of God and what his opinion is of us, what his heart is toward us. Even envisioning like a loving parent's facial expressions, and what would it be like for God to look at us in that way?
Yes, that's so good. To close our time together, you had a phrase where how you defined authentic
Mhm.
beauty. I was just wondering if you could just we ran by that so quickly. I'm wondering if you could just say that one more time as much as you'd like to unpack that
Mm,
in bringing life and hope and truth, because this is all so good. Any nugget of this is, but to land
mm.
this, um, how would you unpack a little bit more authentic
Yeah.
beauty?
Yeah, so I can kind of restate it too. So the definition that I give it
Thank you.
is the life of God at work in us and among us.
Mm, mm.
And so in the book, I give this. I talk about this theologian named Baxter Kruger, and he talks about how this love, this unity between Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, it's like this dance. And so I think about where do I see the life of God? Where I see the dance alive around me? I see it in love. I see it in the beauty of nature. Where is that vibrancy, that dynamisy alive and well in the world? And I think it's everywhere. And so I think that word life, there's like this movement, this dynamic nature to it. And so that's how I'm seeing beauty these days.
I love that. Melissa, do you feel comfortable to just pray a blessing
Mm,
over the men and women that are listening right
mhm,
now? I would love that
mm,
for you to do
mhm.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank
for
you.
sure. God, I thank you for your presence with us. I thank you that we are immersed in your love right this moment. Just we are saturated in your presence and the love and the compassion that you have for us. I pray that there might be steps toward freedom today. I pray that minds could perhaps be enlightened in ways that they hadn't seen certain realities before. And I pray that hearts could be softened to the reality of your love and your life and what true beauty is. I pray that even as people go from this time of listening, that seeds were planted and maybe something would call back to mind something that we talked about today. I just pray for your truth and your freedom and your love to be at work powerfully in each person who is listening. And I thank you that you are ultimate love and that you are ultimate beauty, and that we can have this eternal and authentic hope in you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, we're going to put to learn more how to get in touch with Melissa in the show notes. But just a reminder, Impossible Beauty, you can look it up online. And she has a blog and a podcast that is wonderful. And then the book, Soul Deep Beauty. Friends, it is revelatory, it's vulnerable, it's engaging, and it's inviting to pursue looking at your own life, your own story, and dive deeper into the freedom and the love that our God has for you and for me. Thank you, Melissa. So good to be with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Stacey. This has really been such an honor. So thank you.
Be blessed, friends. Until next time.
Hi, everyone. This is Stacey Burton, the producer of the Captivated podcast. If you've been a regular listener, you've heard the encouraging teachings offered and the incredible conversations Stacey has had with her guests. So wherever you listen, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. May you be filled with the goodness of His love today, and we look forward to having you join us next time.